a very good evening and thank you for taking time to join us in our first panel session tonight. So today's day is Helm on Spouse, and it's a very interesting subject. So I've got three different experts, each helming different spaces, to talk about the sexual connection and keeping the intimacy alive in every marriage. Because we all know when we first get married, all starry eyes, staring into each other, and then after the kids come out, and then household chores come, and then errands, it's like intimacy gets displaced, right? And how do we even go the mile or even to death do us part if there's a lack of intimacy? So I'm very happy to introduce three different experts. Cindy Leong will be anchoring intimacy like in the mindset, right? Like mentally. What does it even mean? The founder of Relationship Studio. Stay tuned for the prizes that we will be giving at the end of this segment. Andrea is from the Athena Rising, where she talks about intimacy at the emotional level. What does it actually mean and what we can do? And then we have Dr. Jess from Insync Medical, who will be talking about it physically, right? Because I think we all have different definitions of intimacy. So with each of us helming the different spaces, it will give a very holistic flow. Yeah. So I want to start this time with Cindy. Yes. I want to ask you, what's your definition of intimacy? Because in your work, you do like Enneagram profiling. So if you can just share that with us.
Yeah, okay. So different personality types on the Enneagram, they see intimacy differently, actually. So your way of seeing the world is not my way of seeing the world. So there are 9 different worldviews. Intimacy can also be in the mental level. It can be the emotional level. It may not just be sex itself, right? It can be a good conversation. It can mean a quality time, or a quality activity together, getting to know each other. So intimacy, there's a short form. We always say, into me you see. So it's how deep into each other that we are seeing.
I think that's so beautiful, Eva, as you share that, because I think the very natural way is self-projection, and we do it unconsciously. So for example, like the type, right? I've done your profiling type, so it was very insightful. I'm a very fast go-getter, right? And then my husband is a little more relaxed. So unconsciously, I'm already like, men's supposed to be faster, men's supposed to lead the way, and he's like, why can't you slow down? And I'm like, why can't you work faster? Always behind me.
Yeah.
And so I think when I begin to remove those lenses that comes from me, my natural type, and begin to appreciate him for who he is, that's what into me see, right? Like into him I see, into my child I see.
Yeah, it starts from removing the lens. You are very right. Yeah, because if you keep having that lens, right, then you're just picking on that person. So if you have so much of complaints and dislike about that person, how much intimacy can you get, right?
Would you be able to give us an example of how, like, when two separate individuals realize how different they are, it actually salvages or brings them closer?
Okay. So there was this interesting couple that came to me. Initially, the wife was like, how can you tell my husband to stop doing things I don't like him to do? Yeah. So I was like, oh, what is it? So I thought, like, why the husband keep doing things that she don't like him to do? So then I asked, what was it? And said, oh, I don't like him to touch my butt in the public. So then I was like, wait a minute here, right? And then I actually asked her, how are you with your body image? Right? How comfortable are you in your own skin? And then she was like, not comfortable. So I said, okay, so the issue's not him. The issue could be you instead of him. So many a times when people come for coaching, right, we just look at the surface, like, it seems like the husband keeps doing things that she don't like. Seems like he's not helping the relationship. But then when we go deeper, then we realize, it's actually, the wife herself does have a body image issue. And then I say, if your husband is touching you in the public, it shows that he desires you, and that's normal, right? If he's touching someone else, then it's not normal, right? So it's normal. Yeah, it shows that he wants you, he desires his way of communicating, he wants you, the intimacy. So after that, we had sessions of coaching on her self-esteem, body image, being comfortable in her own skin. And then after that, it got so much better.
I'm laughing even as you're sharing this. You know why? My husband has the tendency to like curl my hair or touch me, right? And I'm like, like not now, but so I think there are always different issues, right? And for me, what I actually got is, when I'm like, not now, he's like, then if I don't touch you, then touch who, right? And rather my husband like still be attracted to us than touching whoever else, right?
Yes.
So, and for me, what I actually got from that, right, for me and my husband, is actually the 5 love languages. That for my husband is touch. For me, no need. Spend time together can already. If I love you, you have my time, and that is my biggest love language. So I get that. So for all you people out there who think, it's your spouse that has something, maybe we should first look at ourselves. And as we begin to heal ourselves or work on us, we begin to be more open to a lot more things.
Yes.
And wonderful. And Andrea, anything you want to share about what does intimacy mean for you emotionally?
Well, I guess it moves along a whole spectrum for me. So I often get asked because of what I do, like, there's a lot of associations of intimacy with sex. But it's actually really a whole spectrum of pleasure and of eroticism. And sex is kind of part of it, when we throw in elements of like openness, vulnerability, and being connected. And the elements of how much these apply, almost like an ingredient in a recipe, kind of varies from couple to couple, and also individual to individual, And then when they come together as a couple, they kind of create their own blend. And so I find intimacy, it's almost like an ongoing project, at least for yourself and for a couple, where they kind of figure out the different elements that work for them, how it brings them closer and how it brings them together. So a lot of my time when I speak about intimacy is to kind of pull people away from the idea that it's not only about sex. It's not only about foreplay. It's not only about like very sexual touch. There's also the whole spectrum of sensuality, pleasure, connectedness, vulnerability. And these are things that each couple has to kind of figure out in what proportion works best for their relationship. And that may change over time of the relationship as well.
I love the fluidity that you bring into this whole concept of intimacy, because I think when we were cut-toying, right, just me and my partner, we probably had a lot more space, a lot more energy to get physical, to even talk, have long and deep conversations. But come the kids, our conversation changed to be about them, right? And even daytime is about, okay, we haven't done this and then this and then it becomes so practical that we actually lose that companionship and even doing what we like to do, because I don't even have time for myself, much less my husband. And then sleep, I want to sleep, I really, really want to sleep, the energy level is altogether different. So I love how you share, like, no person is the same. So probably what you need is different from what I need at this point. And even then the mix will change as we go through the different life stages.
I mean, it's not something you do. So it's not just the act, which is why I pull it away from the act. Because if it's something that you do, then it becomes part of your to-do list. And that's where some of the pressures are.
Have sex. 1, 3, 5.
Well, I mean, on some level, maybe we should schedule it because of time and because of like certain obligations. But it's not just the act. And that's what the whole intimacy encompasses. Like, when you wake up in the morning, how you look at your partner, I mean, of course, maybe for some people, they're not morning people and, it doesn't work. But like, when you hand them their coffee, like, how do you do it? Like, nah. Versus, like just with a smile, or as much of a smile you can garner in the morning, Like sometimes it's these little things, it's that connectedness, that interaction that creates that whole intimacy package. This is just, did they have sex last night or not? Something like that.
You remind me, right? Like even just here actually I think scheduling it does work. So like now, even as you're saying, I'm just reminding myself in the morning with my husband, I think I should probably greet and kiss him, because we used to do that before he leaves. So we make it a point to kiss before he leaves, right? Just so even if it's routine, out of routine, there is that connection there.
Yes.
But of late, I think with this summit, I'm so focused. This morning woke up, I'm like, doing my work, and then there's that disconnect. So I think scheduling does work.
For sure.
And for you, Dr. Jess, when we talk about intimacy, you specialize in sexual medicine, right? Is there anything you want to talk about the physical connection?
Well, I mean, it's so interesting what they said, because I've just instantly start thinking of these anecdotes and these stories that I have that are personal, and also from patients that I've seen, but I'll share them a little later. But when we view intimacy, like Andrea said, there's so much more to it rather than the sexual bit. But the very first thing that comes to our mind is it's sexual. It's about touch, right? That's the bare backbone that we think of. But there's so much more to it. Like, what about the experiential intimacy. When you work on a little project together, when you say, hey, let's do this together, let's build a little something together, let's build a toy for the kids, or let's work on something together, let's plan a holiday together. That's the experience, and that's the intimacy you get through that experience together. Then there are other elements of it. Andrea spoke about vulnerability, right? And that's the emotional intimacy, where you feel safe to share your deepest, darkest, most shameful secrets with that one person out of the very many million there are out there in the world that you chose to spend the rest of your life with. And if that breaks down the other elements of intimacy, which also includes another part, which is the intellectual intimacy, sharing thoughts, sharing ideas across. And if you have a partner where you have to think twice, you rattle through your brain, you go in swirls before a thought verbalizes out of your mouth because you're afraid that you might be judged. You're afraid, what will he think about this idea? Then there's a break and interruption in the intimacy rather than a direct flow. Hey, I want to just share with you. What do you think when I share this with you? And we want all these elements to be intact. Not just surviving, but thriving, each of these individual elements. And then it's then easier to translate your experiential intimacy, your intellectual intimacy, your emotional intimacy into touches that actually mean something. The sexual intimacy. Otherwise it becomes, okay, to keep him happy or to keep her happy, let's just have sex tonight so I don't have to hear the nagging. So I know that I've done it, I've done it. That's just the mechanics, the motion. So going through the motion, there's nothing intimate about going through the motion of sex. And it depends also on what is your definition of sex, right through all of that.
I so totally love what you share because, so very candidly, right, for all you viewers out there, while I place them as experts, we are all human beings, right? So 5 years ago, I threw my husband out of the house because our marriage was really on the rocks. He spent quite a few nights at my sister-in-law's place, his sister, and that was 5 years ago. So fast forward today, right, we are more in love. Then we had 3 kids, today we have 5 kids. And then exactly what you said, it's about us wanting to make it work. And that's where we build our happily ever after. It's not just about tolerating each other, like having sex for the sake of. So, if I can just very candidly share, right? I remember one period we were having sex, right? And I was tolerating it. I was like, okay, quickly, can you get it done and over? Because in my mind, I just want to go and do other stuff. I mean, that's my reality. And then this thought came. Since I'm having sex, I could tolerate it, like I tolerate the entire marriage, or I can enjoy it, right? And I decided, you know what? Since it's going to last for X amount of time, let's just enjoy it. And as I gave myself fully into the experience of it, it changed, it transformed. After sex, instead of it being a to-do list, right? I actually felt more connected with him. And I know that he felt likewise, in just that engagement of giving myself fully and him, it was a completely different, heaven and hell experience. So, so back to the discussion, right? I want to ask you, Cindy, what are some misconceptions you feel in your line of work that couples have about intimacy, however you define it?
Oh yeah, so of course different, we do see different personality types have different barriers, but I think the whole main thing is about the need to perform. Yeah, the need to perform, the need to sustain. So it's always that. But I must say that intimacy can be natural. It should be natural. Yeah, it is like you spend time with a best friend. Like you chose to marry this person. It's a best friend, your soulmate, right? Why should it be a dreading kind of experience, right? So it's about staying curious, continue to stay curious about each other rather than the need to perform all the time. Yeah, there will be some days that you just like, not a good day, don't talk to me, right? There will be some days that, hey, I have a good news to share with you. So it's all about going through the 4 seasons together. And to me, that itself is intimacy. But a lot of people just see intimacy as the fireworks, but sometimes going through tough times, and maybe 2 persons just eating the Maggi mee together and pouring our hearts out. And that can be an intimate experience. So it doesn't have to be always the fireworks, but it can also be going through tough times together.
I love what you share about best friend, right? Because when it's my best friend, I don't have to try. I'm just being. And I think in today's world, we all become human doings, right? We are like, do this, do this, do this. And we forget that the essence of who we are human beings. Where if we look at the tree doesn't say, oh no, I've got a brown dirty leaf, I need to hide that. You know, and the younger shoots don't go, oh, look at how fresh and green I am. There is no boasting, no judgment, but it's just really in just being, like what you were saying, this is who I am. Right? And completely not having to put that mask, but knowing that I can be accepted without filtering anything that comes out of my mouth. And you were saying that in your Enneagram, that different people have different subtypes or understanding
instincts. So according to the Enneagram, there are, besides the core type, which is the 9, there is also the subtypes. So the 3 different subtypes are self-preservation, social, and sexual.
Okay.
But every instinct, it shows where you place attention on, like where you tend to focus more on. So for example, the sexual subtype will tend to, overplay that need for the sexuality bit and Well, maybe the self-preservation subtype people, they'll be like, I'm loving you by providing the money, the finances, the house, make sure there's food on the table, more self-preservation needs. So in that sense, the way the different subtypes sees intimacy is also different, and the barriers are also different. Like for example, the sexual subtype may overplay that need, and then when they don't get it, then they say, oh, you don't love me. So sex becomes definition of love, which may not be the case for the other different subtypes. Yeah, so that also overlays the 5 languages of love as well. Like in terms of spending time, what is considered spending quality time? For self-preservation, quality time, it could be like cooking a meal together, really self-preservation is, or decorating the house together. The environment plays a big part. But maybe for the sexual subtype, it's like, oh, it has to be a quiet walk at the beach. You look into my eyes, I look into your eyes, just like what you see in the Hollywood movies, and the intensity got to be there and all that. But if you have too much of that, then your daily life becomes pretty dysfunctional too. So there has to be a balance. Yeah.
Wow, there's so much depth and richness to this, to what I'm hearing you say, because it's not just the 9 different types, but even quality time, it's a different activity as they come from a different subtype that fulfills that individual.
Yes.
So I could be spending quality time with you, but probably for me, it's about doing something functional. And for you, completely missing out on that because you didn't gaze into my eyes, you were busy gazing into the front
thing, yes.
And then at the end, that dissatisfaction, right, I'm like, we just spent 2 hours cooking, what more do you want? You're like, you spent 2 hours with this frying pan.
Yes. Yes, and I have that misunderstanding before among this couple where the girl just had a graduation ceremony, came home very happy, and the boyfriend just spent the last 2 hours cooking a very nice meal for her. And she was so disappointed. She's like, that's not what I want. All I want is a rose and a quiet walk at the beach.
Wow.
And then he's like, oh, if you would have done this for me, I would feel so loved and I would feel that there's this intimacy and connection there. But you didn't like it. So that became a quarreling point at one point. And when they come to the coaching session, then now they realize their focus is on different things. They feel love through different kind of activities, connections, right? So yeah, there's no right or wrong to that. There just must be some sort of balance.
I love the word discover and what I'm hearing you share, because I realize that even what used to work like 3 months ago may no longer be relevant today. But as if I go into the relationship, but last time you liked the egg cooked this way, why now not the same? It's a potential setup for a big argument, right? But as I go into the relationship every day, discovering who you are as a person, who you are newly, while I do have some sense, but newly, to allow that space, I think there's a deeper daily connection, so it's a growth together. It's not just, okay, here, and it's stagnant, but it's something that we go deeper both ways. Yeah. Very beautifully shared. Andrea.
Yeah. Misconceptions.
What is, like, in your line of work, this misconception that causes couples to actually attack instead of...
Well, there are a lot. But we will try and, condense it. I think I'm also hearing all the anecdotes, and I think first and foremost, let's talk the super deeper misconceptions and then some of the general ones that we see. And the really, really deep misconception that I see a lot of where they, what you say, attack each other, often is because it almost feels as if you kind of, it almost as if you take the story as personal, and often we don't realize that our partner really is just trying to do good for the relationship. They're really just trying to love us in the way that they know best. And often it goes into, it could be our own personal stories, maybe our past experience, maybe our triggers with certain issues, like for example that body image case, where we then go into like, this person is not loving me, versus no, actually our partner's really just trying not to screw it up. Like, so, if we look at it from that viewpoint, you often are able to find a lot of ways. Your partner is really just trying to do their best in their way. And that's when you see the compassion. And that's when sex also gets a little bit less stressful. When, you kind of see that your partner's also trying to like do their groove and get into that whole foreplay and trying to make it like romantic and sexy and everything. And they do it in their way that they know best. You kind of really have a lot of compassion for them. And it works both ways. And it helps the couple to grow, to see them in that vulnerability. So that's some of the really deeper stuff that sometimes I see comes up. Obviously, the general misconceptions also happen where we generally feel like, if you love me, then the sex must be good. And then the converse of that is, if the sex is not good, there must be something wrong with the love and the relationship. And really, sometimes it's all about, maybe it's just about understanding techniques, maybe it's something about understanding how each person ticks and working together with that. And sometimes even just working through your own triggers and vulnerability with sex or intimacy issues, and then helping your partner understand that concern, and you understanding your partner's concern with intimacy and sex. So I think trying to make that assumption brings it very much into our own, like it becomes very selfish, like, because of this, so my partner doesn't love me, versus how are we going to try and make it work? So I find that misconception actually does happen quite a fair bit, a link between love and sex, and also a lot of where it's your responsibility to again, like perform. It's your responsibility to pleasure me, therefore then then it'll be good, versus your experience where you're like, no, why don't I like try and enjoy it? Let me enjoy it. If I change my perspective, what's going to happen? And then you realize that everything changes for you because you made that mindset change, or that experiential change. Versus like, must wait for my partner to perform, then let's see, then we'll figure out, whether is it good sex or bad sex, or is it like just a good connection or not. But if I put myself into it with the intention of giving my all, or or just really enjoying the process, don't care what the outcome is, don't care if it led to sex or anything, just enjoying the intimacy, like what will happen if I put myself into that. And I realize sometimes that's part of the misconception, like what comes first, the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse. Yeah.
I get what you say, and I think the one thing that really stands out for me is, as we choose to, I feel in my opinion that probably ladies do assume a lot more, because I think guys are very straight. Am I right, or is it just me?
It's the personality type.
Oh, it's the personality type. Cindy will say it's the personality type, because I think a lot of female friends that I know, we tend to have a lot of expectations in our mind, but we don't say this is what I want. We assume you're supposed to know because you are my partner. And in that lack of clarity in communication, right, is where then the poor guy is left guessing.
Yes.
And guess how many times he has to guess, and then wrong. And then he get angry when it's wrong. So I think even like number one, being clear, we're not taking it personally, but knowing that it is about this relationship. Right? It's not about you as a person. I don't put you down as a person. It's not about, but it's about this, that we are still on this journey of discovering each other and growing. And
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so I mean, and that's why I say we have to be really careful about like trying to, not just trying to guess. So I'm not trying to make it a gender thing, but yeah, I sometimes do see that. And then on the and on the guy side, they're really just not trying to screw up. They're really just trying to make their partner happy. And then on the other end, you're like, you don't understand what I want, and you don't get what I want, you don't know where I want to be touched, you don't know how to make pleasure. And then the poor guy's like trying, and there comes a point, and a lot of couples, where sometimes they face problems, actually will see this point happen, where the guy's like, look, then I'm not trying, forget it. And then that's when a lot more of the conflict happens. So which is why I always say, what if the guy's not trying to really screw up? The guy's really just trying to understand. And then how do we learn how to even communicate our desires? I think it's also our responsibility. I mean, not women, but like everyone as partners, our responsibility to figure out how do we communicate what we desire. I know initially it's a bit awkward, oh, I like this, and could you do a bit more? Sometimes it's a bit awkward, even if it's with your partner. That's fine. I mean, you've got a whole lifetime to practice together, right? But giving each other that space to be able to practice even communicating that, I think is very powerful. And that alone is very important.
I think this whole topic on sexual intimacy is something that in Asia, because we're so conservative, nobody ever taught us, right? Do you actually, we are left to discover ourselves. So nobody tells you that you can say what you want. It's a process of self-discovery even, right? Because if I don't know what gives me pleasure, how am I going to communicate it to the poor other person who's also trying to figure out?
Yes.
So it's as we get comfortable with knowing ourselves first, it's then that we give the other person the permission to also receive pleasure, right? Both ways.
Yeah.
And you were nodding. I mean, throughout you were nodding.
My head's about to fall off and nodding my eyes and then shaking my head and going, oh my God, how many times have we seen this, in the line of work? Misconceptions around the subject of sex and intimacy. It's so interesting what you've said and what you said just now, and also Andrea, performance. Every time I hear this word performance, I go, oh my God. Why?
Yeah, I hate that word.
I absolutely get very riled up internally when I hear the word performance. And the problem, and I don't mean to put it down into genders, but as a general rule, men seem to have taken that brunt.
Yes.
I have to perform. I have to show my partner a good time. How many times do you hear women taking that onto themselves? I have to show my partner a good time. I've got to be a tigress in bed. No, not really.
We tend to be more passive.
But there are, we tend to be more passive. But as Cindy said, the personality types and the people who are ranged across this spectrum. But when you take on board that kind of responsibility and sex or intimacy becomes a performance, for me, if you tell me it's a performance, it feels like work. Why am I working after work?
Yeah.
Sex should not be work. It should be something built on the grounding of relaxation. And if it's not built on the grounding of relaxation, then why are we doing it? Why are we engaging in this intimacy? So if you feel like it's work, I have the pressure to perform, I have to make sure my erections are great, when we are together. Can you imagine the intensity of pressure with that? And this brings up the topic of the sex paradox. The more you want something to work the way it should, the less it's going to happen. The more you think my vulva, my vagina has to be wet, has to be wet, has to be wet, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just not going to translate like that because a big proportion of your presence is taken away.
Yeah.
You're thinking
Your
about
energy
end
is
product.
yes.
You're thinking about the end product. So if you just simply go into the moment, and yes, it takes a lot of practice to simply go into the moment. It's so easy to say, but it's hard. It's hard. But if you just offset and go, no pressure, let's touch somebody else for ourselves. Right? You touch for you. So you don't touch someone to look for an arousal. Okay, I'm touching you. I want to see what
Let's
you're
see what
aroused.
happens, right?
Yes. Are you arcing your back? Your penis is getting harder. What's going on? Is she getting wetter? What's going on there? The nipples getting more erect. What's going on? If you keep thinking about the end product, you are absolutely not touching someone for yourself. You're touching them for them.
I think what I'm hearing is we tend to engage with our mind so much, and that, while it's great for conversations, may actually not work so much when we are really connecting physically, experientially. And I want to bring this because if I'm thinking about what should and shouldn't, it already sets standards. And we all know once there are expectations, the potential that we will not meet those expectations is always there. So I want to ask you this thing about being a doctor who specializes in sex. There's this term called, sometimes when you talk about performance, I've got some friends who don't want to have sex because it's painful, right? So, vaginismus. Is that something that you can shed light?
Yeah, it's vaginismus is something that we see a lot of in our clinic, and it's this discomfort or pain or inability to have penetrative sex, and that is just the one form of sex, of course. And when there is fear, there is anticipation of pain. Naturally, that apprehension creates a scenario that is very offensive for this person to allow the penetration to happen. So the penetration becomes impossible. So a lot of women then suffer silently with this. They find it very difficult to bring it up with someone. So many of them attend their gynecologists or their general practitioners But this sort of condition requires a lot of time to understand, what exactly are you going through? What brought up this pain? And many people have this misconception that you have this inability to penetrate because you suffered some sort of sexual trauma. And that honestly is, if I can say, it's BS.
Bullshit.
It's not because you've suffered some sexual trauma. Most of the time there is no sexual trauma. But it's because of a lot of suppression, being told that sex is not to be had until you get married. It's evil. It's you can't behave sluttily. You can't be promiscuous, and that stops you from even exploring your own body. Then you can't even have sex with yourself. So that is stopped in the younger days as you're exploring yourself. So a lot of young girls who've just been married, they'll tell us and we'll explore this. We'll go, tell us why. How much have you touched yourself? What have you done with yourself? Because generally your first sex partner is you. It's not somebody else. It's not another entity. It's really you. And a lot of them would tell us that no, they're very squirmish about touching what we have deemed as erogenous areas of our body, but the vulva. It becomes an entity you carry with you everywhere you go. It's part of you, but it's foreign to you.
Separate,
It's
almost separate.
It's like, no, I can't touch there. And it's a very squirmish exercise to touch there. And it's what the both of you have mentioned. If you're not aware of yourself, then how then do you expect another partner in a heterosexual setting who doesn't own a vulva
Yes.
to understand what works for you? Isn't it harder for them when you don't know what works for you? So breaking those boundaries and going, look, it's okay for me to explore me because this is my body and I should be able to look after it. I should be able to touch it without the connotation of promiscuity or any negativeness to it. I'm simply understanding me. And then you take it from there. Then it's then easier to allow someone else to come into contact with that area of the body without that intensity of fear. So a lot of it is also a big psychosocial element to it, where there's fear, apprehension, what we've been culturally told, the idea that your first time when you have sex is going to be painful. Look, if you told me that, all I'm thinking of is, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. It's going to be painful, right? Rather than being told, your first time is going to be an experiment. Just experiment. If it works, it works. If it didn't work, look, you've got so many more years. It's not going to happen on your first night, is it? Right? So it's just toying around with it, being cheeky about it, being playful with it, and just being a child during intimate physical moments together. Be a child about it. Don't be mechanical about it. Don't go, hey, end product. How come penetrative sex became the star of the show?
Wonderful. I so love how you've just dispelled the guilt and the shame, right? Like even growing up, owning my sexual self, knowing who I am as a woman, and as you just remove, there's nothing shameful in that. There's no guilt. And then as we begin to embrace ourselves, it brings on a whole new inner confidence. Yeah. Okay, and now I want to shift it to a slightly more practical level. Intimacy, like as we start, and as we continue on this journey of exploration, I love how you bring that in, where it's not a destination to reach, but it's a journey, the entire process. In this journey, we do have kids, and after kids, I do have some moms who tell me, Junia, after 3 years of co-sleeping with my kids, the intimacy is affected. How do we get back, So Andrea, how do we keep the intimacy alive? Not Andrea, sorry, Cindy. How do we keep the intimacy alive after kids or in the presence of kids?
Oh, okay. So first thing, try not to co-share co-sleep with the kids. Yeah, like give them their own bed. Yeah, so very importantly, you need to have that couple. Just remember, we are a couple. But sometimes when kids come along, you forgot that your husband is a husband. It's like, oh, daddy. Hey, daddy, take this for. Hey, daddy. So your husband becomes daddy. Yeah, you still have to call him dear, darling, baby. The pet name that you call your husband, I think that's the number one. The name doesn't change. Yeah, it doesn't mean we become parents, then I become mommy, you become daddy, and then we're no longer husband and wife, right? No longer lovers. So it starts from that, the cognitive level, right? And then after that, of course, a lot of effort will have to be put in terms of agreement, like maybe celebrations. How do we do celebrations? How do we want to spend time? Maybe we should put our kids with our parents once a month so that we can have a date night or things like that. Or if it means to take a day leave just to spend time with that partner, why not? So it's really about knowing, sensing each other, like, hey, really cannot already. The love tank is like going dry, So I need a bit more love from you. I need a little bit more intimacy or more connection with you. So gotta sound out lah. Gotta sound out. Like I do know that if I get too busy, my husband will be like, lately you're very busy, huh? So I know, okay, I get a hint, right? So it's about like having that system to hint each other, to know that, hey, I want more of you. Yeah, because sometimes the partner may not want to show the vulnerability, like, I need you, I want more of your time. Like, maybe not. But that is a good hint, so I get it. So it's about working out that system to want to spend time with each other.
What you say about even being conscious of it, it's so vital in any relationship, right? Like when we talk about the role of the father and the husband, right? Because it's two completely different relationships, the spousal relationship and the parenting relationship. And so not losing sight of that, but I think even as you're sharing, I'm just present to my husband, with this summit, he's present to that. And how present am I to also spend time on working on the relationship? Of course, it's seasonal, but I think for a lot of couples, right, when we completely leave this relationship without spending time for a prolonged period, it's no wonder potential temptations come in, right? Whether for you or for myself, whether work, it may not even be another partner, it could very well be work, it could even be the kids, right? And then after that, resentment starts to brew. So I think being very mindful of that will keep the intimacy alive. Andrea?
Well, so personally, I'm a single mom of 2 kids, so I have different challenges with time and management. When I'm a great co-parent, but like I also work with a lot of moms with kids, and this tends to be the question from both mom and dad. I find that we often have we often don't, like, we move very quickly into life stages, and we don't have conversations about what does that mean for each partner and how does that affect us. We just like, we're almost like very efficient as Singaporeans, like, like, okay, we have a kid, and then like, we move into this and then this stage, and then they go into toddlerhood, and then like, we're almost doing all this mechanically, but like, what does it mean for you when, like, does the mom feel something different because her body changes? Does she feel a little bit more, are there more fears? So I always go in terms of play, and obviously the little bit more shadow areas where I work with, like, what are your fears? Have you all communicated even your fears about certain things? What are your fears around, not being present because you're managing the summit, and how would that, impact your intimacy? Like, what are your fears around that? So it's not about saying that, because I'm doing this summit, I also have to make sure that I spend time with my husband and be present. At the end of the day, sometimes there are different peaks in our career, in the stuff that we do, our social life, even in our lifestyle at home, which mean that at that point in time, maybe one of the partner cannot be as present as possible, but like to continue to understand each other and the fears around that. Like, I feel that because, I'm doing that, I may lose track, of this, like, and then you will work out solutions together. Like, oh, okay, we won't lose track. I'll remind you. How do you want me to remind you? You want code word, or whatever. Or during this period, I won't feel like, I won't feel that it's against me. I know, during this period we don't talk. But then after that, we book this session after that, something like that. So like, you have that communication, you come up with solutions together. You have private code words, you play little games. Where during this period, I know, it's just too much on your mind, but, like, you cuddle a bit more, like, are you okay with that? And then, the other partner's like, yeah, I could do that because, I just am physically not really in that space. Then, okay, then fit that in, and just play a little bit more, tease a little more. You can continue to tease each other, stress or no stress, in different parts of your career, throughout the day, flirt a little. How do you flirt with your partner before that? You can, always continue that. You can even continue after having kids. That doesn't go away. But naturally, with life transitions, needs change. Even your concerns and what you think about change. So have that conversation, because one partner may be very concerned about maybe body after childbirth, but another partner may be more concerned about finances about child after the child comes out. So then they have different stresses, and that affects their libido, or even just the need for connectedness, or the way they respond to intimacy differently. So have that conversation, and that's what I usually facilitate when I see post childbirth, or like parents with kids trying to just figure it out. So it's not so much. So obviously one of the solutions is set certain time together. But if you set that without having that conversation, then you end up going for date night or sex night, and you be like, okay, we're doing it. Or like, we go to that restaurant and we have dinner, and then they'll be like, we've tried that. So I had a few people who came to me and were like, we've tried that. That's what, that relationship advice is. And I was like, yeah, but where is that container that you're holding when you're doing all that? And so that's, so there's a little bit of play, but there's also that deeper conversation of what fears are coming up when these things happen.
I love what you share because while we can just copy the steps to do, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are engaged in the heart, right? Like it's always the root. And once we get anchored on the principles, the form can take any shape, correct? I could be doing date night, I could be, it's just a pat on your cheek, it's just a touch on the butt in a public space, but whatever the different form is, as long as the principles and the root is anchored on keeping that alive, I think magic happens.
Yep.
And
it's so nice,
just listening. Hey, and you don't have to just wait,
No, I mean,
let it go.
it's just really nice. And then I'm catching Andrea just saying that. I'm going, oh my God, there's something I want to say about that too. And it's, just with what you said, Cindy, sleeping with the kids, I think we actually set ourselves up for that failure when we allow things like that to happen, because we let them know that that's all right. Kids are malleable, sponges.
Yeah.
You show them the way, they're going to take it on board,
Yeah.
right? And if you show them, look, mommy, daddy have to self-respect themselves. This is our space. Then they know, they take that with them and they apply it to themselves.
Yeah.
This is my space. I have my bubble around me. This is not a space that is to be interrupted.
Yeah.
And they take that with them through the years. But if you show them that this space can be disrespected, you can come in and you can step into my private space, sleep in my bed with me, you set them up for that failure. They're going to repeat that. Or they're then going to have to go through this whole journey to unlearn that.
Yeah. Oh dear.
So we set it up for them. And I think it's important. And a lot of this stems from us allowing ourselves to be disrespected. And we allow that to happen because we are often worried about offending somebody else, seeing the kids upset. So we put them first before we ended up putting ourselves. But it's easy to then create that boundary and go, look, it's important that mommy and daddy are together. So, like for me, with my kids, I remember there's one night that my son said, no, you have to sleep with me because it's a Saturday night. And then I'm like, yeah, I did say that, but yesterday daddy slept alone and he couldn't sleep.
Wow.
And he missed me. And daddy was there and daddy gave this face to it. And he goes, can I have mommy today? And then he looked at that and he realized, this is it. He goes, okay, you can have her today, And then so he allowed that to happen. And he made that decision himself, seeing that was important, and that we as parents also have needs. It's not all about you. Again, you're not the star of the family.
Yes.
We all are little stars, and each of our stars, each of our lights have to be respected. So the kids can make the decision, but we will set ourselves up for failure if we allow it to happen time and time and time again, because you've created that as a norm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then,
let me just add and then you continue. I love what you share because I think in the heart of every family unit, it starts with the parents. Am I right? If the parents are not setting that role model and not that and not loving each other, the kids will likewise model that later on in their own marriage. So I think ultimately, like one of the things that I'm always very touched by is, and I thank God for my husband, where he's always very loving and he's always very supportive behind me. So if the kid is disrespectful, he shows them love. He actually loves me, and in showing love, and for me, respect to him, it builds that picture of what intimacy is, of what a best friend or a good marriage is about, instead of lowering the standards and making the kids the star of the show, right? I think we are the ones who are like, once the marriage is strong, and then it cascades downwards.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yes.
the other thing I wanted to add was when you spoke about, you guys sort of mentioned it, the agreements, and this assumption, this fear to offend somebody else, and then that stops us from opening up a conversation. Then it becomes a silent agreement. You have some thoughts in your head, I have some thoughts in my head. We assume you're going to feel that way. For example, this week I had lots of exams to sit. So, and retrospectively, when I looked at how my partner reacted, not once did he approach me for any sort of physical intimacy. Automatically, he knew that I was going to be busy. And he didn't come forth with that bold approaches. And he stayed up with me, like he's studying in bed, and he'd stay up with me and he'd watch his TV once in a while. You want anything? And he just stayed up, and that is that intimate connection that I had, and I knew what he was doing. But it would have been doomed if I didn't speak about it, if I didn't bring it up, and I just go, I saw that you did that. Really thankful.
Yeah.
And I thank you for doing that. That's great. And then he goes, exams over, right? Now we can, right?
Yeah.
And these are the little things that you have to be able to say your thank yous when someone's done something nice. Like that story you mentioned, the boyfriend who cooked for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And like if she just had done I know you spent so much effort cooking.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Let's enjoy this meal.
Yeah.
And then I could have had a flower and a wok would have been
Yeah.
nice too. Could we do that? And like if we give a person a thank you, at least they feel that what they have done hasn't gone to waste.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the other thing was, even for me, as I was studying, I went into a silent agreement. That's because and I did that guilty as charged. All of these things we've mentioned, done, dusted, did it before. Guilty on every aspect of
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
And but I suppose we grow and unlearn,
Yeah.
right? So I could have said that, hey babe, having exams, I know we want to connect once in a while physically, but you think this week we can lay off? And then he might go, why? I go, I think I'm not going to be in the right mindset. I feel like I will not be focused. I'm just not going to be there. We're just going to go through the motion of it, but I really don't think I'll enjoy it. I might as well just use my sex toy and do it if that's what I want to do. Right? So then he'll go, okay, if that's the case, and I also don't want it. And I said, I'm happy for you to do whatever it is. If you feel like you need to release some energy, you go ahead. You don't know. That's a spoken agreement. Very clear. It's very clear between the two of you. Spoken out in the open. You agreed on it. Handshake, saliva, whatever. You want to shake on it. You do it.
Yeah.
And nobody can fault you on that because it's an open, spoken agreement. And then there's clarity around it.
Yes.
And then when that tough period is over, then you go back and you create another spoken agreement. And that's where he asked me, so how? Now you're okay? And then I go, yeah, now I'm okay.
I love the transparency that you have with your husband, because I think very often in any relationship there tends to be an elephant, a white elephant in the middle of the hallway, but we just choose not to acknowledge it, so we walk around it as uncomfortable as it is. But if we just address it, it literally disappears. It connects us at a deeper level, not just like what you were sharing in acknowledging, right? Like, this may not be my love language, and thank you. I realize that you stayed up late, and I get that it's your way of loving me and supporting me through this period. So thank you. And I think that small sentences does wonders for growing the depth and the intimacy in the relationship. So I love what you shared.
Yeah, no, actually, most often than not, the elephant's not even there. We are probably thinking about different elephants between the two partners. So that to me is usually I wouldn't say crime, but like the bigger pain that I see, because like I'm like, you could be having completely different conversations and not having to go through that. So sometimes maybe the elephant not even there.
Or maybe like one is an elephant, something
something
else.
somewhere.
Something else.
Yeah. So these things are really important, because when we kind of thank each other and when we kind of like talk like little sentences and appreciate each other, we're kind of showing our partner that I'm trying to also love you in your way, and there's that effort. It's not just I do something for you, you do something for me. I love you and then you love me. Like it's not like a transaction. It's not like a two-way thing, but it's like I'm also trying to work with you as a team, and we're trying to work with each other, grow together, and then we kind of fuse as a team. Even that fusing kind of takes that's the effort and that connection that happens. Yeah, but I love your story with your husband. Yeah.
The other thing, like since like I'm trying to deal with the more physical aspects of keeping intimacy alive. So we all want the quick fix, right? The magic, show me one tool that I can use. And like previously I mentioned that sometimes sex can feel like work. And a lot of times we go into, and I'm talking about just sexual intimacy here, when we go into sexual intimacy, there are many times where we're not in the mood. We start off not in the mood, but we know that, if I engage in it, and that's how the scheduling, so that we put the schedules in there so that we can give ourselves these reminders, okay, let's participate in this activity. Might not feel in the mood, but you might respond to it. So, there's something called a spontaneous desire, and then you have responsive desire. You might not feel like you're in the mood first. Perhaps if you were touched a certain way, somebody rubbed, your neck, or touched the back of the curve of your back, and then you feel a little bit more relaxed, and then you get a response, and you feel like it now. The whole thing is that if you block the flow straight away at the get-go, you say no, you don't allow for any potential magic to happen, right? So
Yeah.
you don't know whether you would potentially respond down the road. And if sex feels like work, then don't make sex so hard. Look at tools, what are the avenues to make it easier? So sex toys and Andrea, you've done a few workshops on sex toys and all. So they're little gadgets, we're in a tech world. There's so many fancy things out there. Make it easier. You don't have to work your tongue so hard. You don't have to work your fingers so hard. Grab one of these gadgets and make it easy, simple, make it fun.
I'm just smiling at what you're saying because like a massage tends to do it for me, right? And I think my husband knows it. Do you want a massage? And then for me it'll be like, with sex as a goal for you or really just for me? And I realize one of the best experiences I have is when he massages me, because we all can sense that intention, right? Just to give me pleasure without, removing some of my clothes so that it will potentially lead to something. But when he just massages me to give me relief, to just give and love me that way, it actually starts something that I wasn't originally prepared for. So, as you give, right, it's always reciprocal in every relationship. So if we think, the advice to audiences out there, if you feel like intimacy is lacking, my first question will be, what are you doing about it? Instead of sitting passively and expecting, what could you do to inject a little, like what Andrea says, fun, spark humor? What is some initiative, you can begin to explore and start coming out to be responsible for the depth of intimacy in your marriage?
Yeah. Sometimes alcohol works.
Yes, and why not, right?
Yeah. So it's to sexplore, okay? Not just explore. It's an exploration.
It's disinhibiting, isn't it? I mean, sometimes we are so strung up.
Yes.
We're very tense. I mean, we all work very hard.
Yeah.
And a little bit of alcohol, well, not a hell of a
No,
lot.
no,
Not a lot. You're not supposed to be alcoholic,
Then everything becomes non-functional.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've seen the other issue.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not
And you
very
just want to disinhibit. You just
a
want to
bit.
plow off that top layer that's pounding you, or like just cut a bit of that string and go, I can breathe.
Yes.
And I love what you talk about alcohol, because it's not just even for sex, right? It's even for me to once in a while just relax. Because I think sometimes, especially in Singapore, it's so we live in such a highly strung and such a high pressure environment that we are like boom, 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 from day to night till the moment my head touches the pillow. If I'm not consciously relaxing myself, it really. And this is how we live life, it's how we do life instead of how we just be.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and I posted this recently, like the levels of stress that we have is like inversely proportionate to the amount of pleasure we can receive in intimacy and in sex. And so, I mean, there's certain elements we can't control, like even with COVID, there are a lot of stress in the situation that we can't control because we don't know what's happening, we don't know when the rules will change, we don't know what things, and we feel like almost contained somewhat. We don't know whether it will affect our business, our livelihood. So there's certain things we can't control, but there are also a lot of ways sometimes we take certain things too seriously. And that's why, if you're in a partnership where we can kind of laugh together, learn together, and sometimes the sex may end up not being that nice move. Most of the time it's not that movie sequence, it's a little bit messy and it's a little weird, you try a position and then you fall off the table and it happens, So and then you laugh about it, or you have that little joke, or even the way you were talking to the kids, or and then daddy tries to make that face to convince the kids, that little partnership. Those are things that then you kind of recall on, and then you laugh a bit, and that's where you kind of lighten it and release the stress a bit, and then it leads to all the other connectedness that you're trying to see. I mean, we don't take ourselves so seriously in that sense. We do a lot of that, and we do have to actively figure out what obligations or what ways helps us relieve stress, in general, like what works for us. Is it the extra run? Is it that workout? Is it understanding that we don't take so much obligations? Is it understanding how we view certain things, like, how seriously we view certain things, almost. It's a lot of that whole inner work, and then therefore enriches our relationship and our sexual intimacy.
I think when we know what makes us happy, that anchors us, and then we're whole and complete to then give. Okay, I just wanted to wrap this up. I think it's a very insightful conversation, and I just wanted to ask, right, to sum up, what's one advice that you can give parents, viewers out there? One specific action couples or an individual can do more of.
I would say is to intentionally spend time to delight your partner. So it's intentional because we're all busy, right? Intentionally, right? It has to be intentional. If not, it will be out of the window. But to come from the angle that I want to delight the other person, it's like Ritz-Carlton, right? They have this, have you delighted your client, anyone in this week, right? And I think that is so important even in our marriage. I mean, if we will serve our client at the topmost, well, why don't we serve our spouse? I mean, we are called into that relationship to serve. Not to be just thinking about myself, right? It's to serve. And when we put the other person first, the other person will also do likewise. Yeah, so I think it is like a giving relationship. Like when you are in a relationship, you give. So so it's about intentionally doing something, and it may not be the way I want to be loved. It's the way he wants to be loved. And so sometimes, like I say, he's just doing his calls, right? And I'll just like, hey, get you a drink, or like so long he hasn't been like munching any snacks, so I just like, hey, your snack. Things like that, right? It's just like small little acts of service. Yeah, so again, the love language. And then of course his subtype is self-preservation. So food works perfectly fine.
Oh.
Yeah. So food is the one.
I'm hearing my husband there, but I'm just wondering whether his is more self-preservation or the sexual parts of this. Right?
So it's self-preservation. So self-preservation, people tend to see sex as more like
for offspring.
Yes, survival needs, huh? Yeah, well, for sexual subtypes, it's more like the connection, the intimacy, and the da-da-da. However, we cannot just be using this, our own subtype, to judge the other person, right? So the self-preservation spouse is also working very hard to put food on the table, to make sure you have a house, to live in, and all that, and the space to create that intimacy. So all are important, right? So his way of the love language is really food, lor. Act for service, food, lor. Help out with the kids, and that can ease off his stress, and then the intimacy can happen.
I'm so like going to apply what you share, because with me and my husband, right, he loves junk food. I'm obviously like, so he's prosperous and I'm different, right? And I used to like, come down like, oh, but it's not healthy. Look at the example you're setting for our kids. But in just listening to you, I think the one word that I hear is intentional. So when it's intentional, it's no more about me or the kids, but I think once in a while cutting him some slack and like, okay, let's enjoy, and I'll do it with you. Let's go binge on some junk food, right? And while it may not be, well, that's not the norm. I think the exception. I think you'll really feel loved. When I eat with him, junk food itself.
Yeah, you appreciate, because you know that you're getting out of your comfort zone. This is not something you do.
Yes.
But for you, I'm doing it.
Yes.
So,
only for you, you're so important. And,
Yeah.
and we all could do with some loving, right? When someone goes out of their way for us.
Yes, really to appreciate that. I think the beauty of the couple, sometimes when they come to us, although just understanding each other from the personality level, but it's like, hey, by default, for certain personality types, certain tasks are just harder for them. It's easy for you, but it's not easy for them. Self-disclosure for certain types are just not as easy. So if they bother to disclose a bit more than usual, that is effort. So can you appreciate him or her for that effort? So it's not to measure it at your standards, but to understand that that person is also putting in the effort, and appreciating them.
I so love how while you have the 9 types, it's not about boxing someone in, but throwing away the boxes and really understanding each person for the unique person being that they are. Andrea, any one advice?
Well, so I would say make it a practice every time we're kind of initiating more intimacy, or maybe just before we go into act of intimacy, to make it almost like a practice or a mantra. I say this a lot in different workshops, no judgment and no expectations. So no expectations in terms of how it's supposed to be. Like yesterday was 10-10, so today must be 10-10. Or yesterday was like no rating, no grading, no expectations. It is what it is, like whether there'll be climax or not, that is a different story. It is what it is, and it's just the experience together. And then no judgment, so no rating, no, not like today is 7-10. Oh, today is 7. Maybe tomorrow we'll try for 8. Like none of that. So no judge. So like almost like a mantra, and it's a practice, because we are going to fall back into our habits. So it's just a practice, it's a muscle that we're trying to practice. So just to make it a practice, like no judgment, no expectations.
I think that mantra can literally be applied in life in general, right? In whatever you do, like no judgments, no expectations, so that we fully give ourselves into whatever work we do, whether it's your studies, whether it's the summit, you know, whether it's in pleasing my partner or in just serving the kids. Yeah, very good, very powerful.
The one thing that I've applied to myself, you know, and I haven't gotten into a place where I'm helping people as well through this without having gone through my own struggles. So I've had relationship coaching as well. And the one thing that I really picked up from there is to be vulnerable with your partner. Because we cannot assume that they understand what we're feeling up here. They can't read our minds. And sometimes it's hard to read our own minds. And if we don't share, and we don't share things that we might feel guilty about, might feel shameful about, and we're constantly wondering what he might think about it if I were to share. Instantly you create the blocks. Instantly you're not relaying the information clearly, and they're not going to fully comprehend what's going on up here, what's going on down here. And I think it gives them a fair opportunity to then be able to respond back properly. If you are not vulnerable, then that's not going to happen. And the other thing with the physical aspect of things is that, you know, when you're doing something for your partner, or you're engaging in a physical, intimate activity with your partner, and if you don't feel like it, but you've gone ahead and done it, and you've done it because you know it makes them happy, you have to check the reverse. Does it make you happy to make them happy? If making them happy makes you unhappy, you've got to pause and stop and evaluate, why did I get angry doing that? And I've had moments like this where I've allowed the physical sexual activity to carry on, but I was very unhappy about it. But I allowed that to happen to me, and I got angrier through that process. And I took the anger with me, and it one day seeped out in an argument. It just goes and it pops. It will come up in an argument down the road. So if you find that you're getting angry doing something, sometimes we have sex angrily. It's the obligatory sex. So we have sex angrily. You got to pause and go, stop for a minute. Why was I angry in that? And relay that to the partner, feeling a little bit angry. And, you know, then you take it from there. Clear that and then move on.
I can so identify with that, because there was a period where obligatory sex, it went on for an extended period of time. After a while, I really had this conversation with my husband where I was like, you know what, let's say no for a while, because I unconsciously find myself saying yes, 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 even though my heart didn't want. And I was beginning to resent sex. I was beginning to resent him as a person, even though, you know, and all this time he didn't know, right? Because it's all inside, bottled up. And as soon as I got present to that, and I began to say no. So for me, it was about drawing my boundaries. I was like, can you give me a bit of space? And as I began to say the first no, uncomfortable as it was, I just said no, no. And I realized that I began to build up the sacredness of sex, right? Of what I want sex to mean or symbolize in our relationship, where I want it to be something that we enjoy. And it reached the point where I wasn't enjoying. And, you know, having the courage to just communicate that so that he gets, it's not about him, it's about me, right? But then so we restored that, you know, and now, and I think when he actually began to respect those boundaries that I drew for a bit, it made me fall in love with him more. It made me realize, wow, this is a man who truly honors me and what I want for this period. Yeah, so very wise words, and thank you, ladies, for the very delightful conversation. I think it could have gone on. And so for all you viewers out there, we have very generous gifts from each of our ladies. So Cindy will be giving a 2-day profiling workshop, the Enneagram workshop, where she talks about the 9 types and the 3 subtypes. It's worth 686. So just key in profile, PROFILE, profile. That's for Cindy if you want her free workshop. And then Andrea will be giving away a free couples deck. It's worth $39.90, where it's about having fun, right? Like, if we are not so creative, right? People have already created, creative people have created that for us. Why not use it, right? Like, what? There are so many.
Play a game.
Play a game. So just key in deck cards, And for Dr. Jess, if you have one free intimate consult, so if you have any woman-related issues, right, because all of us are unique, and you want a private consult with her to better understand your physical body, worth 120, just key in intimate consult. That's for Dr. Jess. Intimate consult, deck cards, and profiling for Cindy. So other than that, thank you. I trust that today's session was insightful. And if you have any friends, any female friends that you feel will be able to benefit from this share, invite them to register because they will still be able to watch the replay, which we will leave here. So thank you, and you have a great Wednesday evening. Bye.